Welcome to our 71 10 Reasons for Online Listening webinar. I am Magda and I will be your host today. Before I kick off, let me just share some practical advice with you. So we've scheduled the webinar for about 45 minutes, after which we will allow an extra 10 minutes for a QA. I will not be able to answer any of your questions during my presentations. However, you can feel free to put any questions, any comments on the chat box on your left, and we will try to gather all the questions and answer them at the very end of the presentation. My colleague Eva is here with me, and she will be also helping you out with any queries, so don't hesitate to contact her via the chat window. As I mentioned, I'm Magda, and I'm Marketing Director at Senti1, a social listening and online reputation management platform. I've been working in online marketing for over 10 years now, and today I will share some of my knowledge with you. If by any means you don't get to you don't get your questions answered today, or you wish to contact me at any other time, you can see my Twitter handle on the screen. So please feel free to contact me directly at any time. So everyone's been talking about the data overload for the past couple of years, and all the presentations that I've been attending to recently have been mentioning the scary data about how the internet is growing. And there's a good reason for it, because the rapid growth of the internet conversations is happening right before our eyes, and it's very hard to catch up with the new trends and whatever is happening online. Just in the past 2 years, 90% of all the world's data has been created. This trend doesn't seem to be increasing. On the contrary, the growth is actually becoming faster. So how it affects the online conversations? Well, they do accompany the growth at the same rate. As you can see here, the conversations happening on the social media are growing really, really fast, and that growth trend doesn't stop. This is the screen that I've taken this morning from a really great source called Internet Live Stats. This shows how huge amount of internet users we have online just today. There's over 2 million new blog posts, 200 million tweets, and it all just happened from this morning till now. And by the way, this data is already outdated. So what does it mean for brands? Well, I think we all suffer from FOMO. For those of you who are not familiar with the phrase, FOMO is a fear of missing out. So we as brands, as marketers, we're seeing that with such a rapid change happening online, we can't really catch up and we can't be everywhere. And I think that at this rate, that's exactly why the online monitoring is becoming more and more useful. The reason for it being that because we can't gather all the information, we cannot monitor everything that's happening online, we really need to make sure that we capture and understand the information that's only relevant for us. That's why the online monitoring. And today I will share some top reasons to start monitoring online conversations, and I will give you some practical examples of how great brands and applied that in practice. So let me start with number one, which is the brand image checkup. Auditing your brand with internet monitoring is really useful because it gives you information on the internet users who view your brand online. So it gives you the idea of the perception, but it also gives you the idea about whether your brand is being talked about at all. So we all ask ourselves, I think, the same questions when thinking about our place in the market. You know, where are we? Are we talked about at all? What do people say about us? Are there any peaks and lows? Is there any trends, or are there any haters? Or is my market share declining? All of those and more answers can be obtained via social media and online monitoring. And right now, I'm going to show you an example of a brand that we all know very well. This is the chart illustrating the mentions about iPhone 7. I chose it because it's obviously a well-known brand that pretty much everyone talks about, so it should have quite a steady flow of mentions. But what we can notice online is that over the past 6 months, there was a quite a significant peak in the mentions online. And this is the first piece of information that you can get from the monitoring. But this bit is not enough to give you a full picture because obviously you want to know where the peaks are coming from. And in this instance, I did a little bit of digging and I actually learned that the biggest peak in conversations about the iPhone 7 is the launch of Samsung Galaxy S8. So it's a quite funny one that how different brands correlate with each other and how it affects online conversations. And we could say that it's actually okay that it grew, but again, this statistics alone is not sufficient unless you get the sentiment of the conversations happening around the brand. So the next measurement that is very, very useful and can be very easily obtained is the actual conversation sentiment, which shows how the conversations, what tone do the conversations happening online have. So obviously you can see that although the spike in the conversations was quite large, their sentiment didn't really change. So we can easily assume that obviously the launch of Samsung 8 S8 helped iPhone 7 because the buzz around the brand increased, and it didn't and it didn't damage their reputation at all. Number two is avoiding the image crisis. And this is actually a huge, huge issue that a lot of brands are dealing with right now because we all know that the crises have been happening for a while on the internet and they will always happen in the future. So I think that when thinking about the crisis, it's not necessarily and only to be perceived in a, from a perspective of avoiding it, but it's also about how to spot the crisis early enough to be able to react, how to tell whether the crisis is big enough so it requires or it doesn't require our attention, what to do with the crisis, and what and how a certain crisis affected a brand. Because I think that the one thing that we really, really need to realize is that people all over the world and all over the internet, what they really love is bad news. So you can rest assured that whenever there's bad news coming our way, internet users will not let it go past unnoticed. And I think that remembering it is very crucial because if we do, we will we will set our eyes on potential crisis and we will be able to spot it as it emerges rather than being too late. Right now, I'm going to share a couple of examples with you of how different brands handle crises differently. So I don't know if you're familiar with Ben and Jerry's. This is one of my favorite ice cream making company. They call themselves a dairy company. They have a great variety of products, flavors, you name it. It's very popular mainly in the US. As you can see, in the last 6 months, Ben and Jerry's had quite a busy period. There were quite a few spikes in the conversations. And again, looking at the number of mentions and the conversations could tell us that there's something going on the internet that sparks the interest, but knowing only this is not enough. So basically, I started digging deeper to see what was exactly happening during those spikes. So the first one is the one that everyone loves. It's a free cone day that happens every year where when Ben and Jerry gives away free ice cream. This had a greatest spike last year. Unfortunately, this year, this particular event didn't really didn't really hit the peak, because there's two other events that you can see, which is in February and May, and they do actually last until today. And it's very important to figure out what they mean exactly. So I did. And what appeared to be happening with Ben and Jerry's, who are, by the way, picturing themselves as a very friendly brand, is the fact that they actually are abusing their employees. So they're facing a huge crisis in the US at the moment, where a lot of people are protesting, and there's a huge buzz around the brand. And it doesn't just last for a day or two. It's been going on since February, so we're now facing 4-month crisis. And what I wanted to see is to check what Ben& Jerry's are doing about it. So not only I didn't find any official statements about the crisis, but also when I started checking out what's happening on Ben& Jerry's website and on their social media, they're actually completely ignoring the crisis. To me, it's a sign of ignorance. I think that, well, I hope it doesn't end too badly for them. To me, it's a sign of a poor and insufficient brand reputation management. Let's move to a more optimistic example. This is a fairly old one, but I think it's everyone's favorite when it comes to handling social media crises. It's it's a Volkswagen crisis from a few years back. I think you might remember the fuel emissions gate, I call it, when Volkswagen, it was revealed that Volkswagen was lying about the fuel emissions of their cars, and a lot of car use were affected. And obviously, the internet went ballistic. I've here put on some of the examples of what people were saying about Volkswagen, but initially, everyone thought that Volkswagen is not going to get away with what they did. And I think that what really saved them is the way they decided to handle the crisis. So, first of all, they didn't panic. There was quite a long break, because for over a week they went quiet. But when they did actually decide to talk about the crisis, the first thing they did, they released a statement that was saying that they were really sorry and they would like to apologize to everyone. The second thing that they did, they launched a special website where everyone could find out if they were affected by the faulty data. And the last thing they did everything they could to fix the thing. So this is an example of how effectively spot, analyze, and handle the crisis that happens online. And I think that today a lot of people don't talk about that anymore, and Volkswagen is still one of the most popular car brands in the world. So number 3 is competitor analysis. I cannot imagine any brand building a successful strategy, marketing strategy, without recognizing what the competitive landscape is, what competitors do, and analyzing the overall trends in the market. And I think that that's another way how online monitoring can come in very handy. I can give you obviously a lot of examples, but I decided to choose a couple here. And the first one that I want to show you is the one from the presidential election from last year, but also some statistics from this year. It's competitive analysis doesn't necessarily have to be about the brands. It can also be about your share of voice as a person in personal branding, in media, in PR, and so on. On the left side, I'm showing you the data from right before the election, where Hillary Clinton had almost half of the share of voice, while since the beginning of this year, 98% of all the conversations on the internet are relating to Donald Trump. This is a quite interesting one, because it actually shows how quickly the people's attention can shift. And the same exercise can be done when analyzing our positions against competitors. I like also looking at different aspects of the target audiences. So let's go back to the iPhone 7 example again. Here you can see the analysis of the target group in terms of the gender. We've taken this from our platform. At the top chart shows iPhone 7 gender audience analysis versus the Samsung 8 audience analysis. As you can see, if we're only looking at those two stats, we could assume that the audiences of those two brands are quite similar, which puts those brands in quite a difficult position. However, when you drill down a little bit deeper into the top domains that the conversations are taking place about those two brands, you can then see that there's quite a lot of significant differences. So, for example, iPhone 7 users prefer Twitter, while Samsung Galaxy users are very active on YouTube. This gives a brand a very healthy and a nice perspective, but it can also open great opportunity windows to see where the gaps are and where they could actually enter the market in order to change their positioning on or win over the share. Number four is the target group. Obviously, your consumer should always be at the core of your brand. Whatever we do, whenever we design the products, marketing strategies, and so on, we always think about the consumers, and we put a lot of effort in finding the insights about the consumers. And again, online media and social media monitoring can help us achieve just that. And I'm not just talking about finding the right mentions and exactly what people talk about, but also discovering the cohorts, the demographics, and different metrics that could help us define the target group. So going back to my favorite examples of Ben and Jerry's ice cream and iPhone 7, you can see that that ice cream, surprise, surprise, is very, very, very popular among female audience, while mobile phones obviously are more talked about by guys. This data, although seems very, generic, it could give us a very valuable insights on how to target our communication, on how to change the communication, or whether there is an opportunity to target different groups. Another thing that we need to consider is the number of are the top social media channels that are present online. And this is the list that I've taken from Statista, which is a very nice source for a lot of information. Those are the most popular channels in 2017 on social. As you can see, there's a huge variety of channels, and it's very hard to gauge, looking at that, it's very hard to gauge which channels we should be present on. And again, looking at the overall statistics might be fine, but when you go in deeper and start monitoring your online media and narrow it down to the online audience, you can actually find very, very significant differences. So here you can see on the left the audience chart from the ice cream, Ben and Jerry's. And what's very, very specific about it is the fact that almost 90% of all the conversations happening about ice cream are happening via photos and videos. And I found out that it's actually via Instagram. What it means, well, people love sharing their ideas on how they eat their ice cream, and it's actually a huge, huge opportunity for the brand. On the contrary, on the other side, you can see, for example, that Donald Trump conversations are happening mainly on Facebook. So we could assume that a lot of political related matters are being discussed on that channel. So this and other examples of sorry, this and other examples of applying sources drilled down to your specific cohort or to your specific target group can give you valuable insights on A, where to be present on, and two, what channels to develop. Okay, number 5 is nurturing the target group. This is something that I'm a huge fan of. I think that acquisition and customer acquisition is only a first and a very small step into having a successful marketing strategy. I think the key to success is actually getting the right retention strategy and making sure that people that our customers are being looked after, nurtured, because there's a lot of proven examples and data that shows that the customers who are being satisfied with the brand and the level of the service that they're getting, they are much more likely to stay with us or recommend us to their friends. The one example that I wanted to show you today is the example from a few years back, which I really love, which illustrates how online monitoring can help people spot the conversation and react quickly. This is an image of a guy who boarded the plane on his way to New York, and he tweeted his favorite restaurant to bring him steaks to the airport. And imagine his surprise when, as he was departing, so as he landed in New York, he actually got served his favorite steak. And this is a very spectacular example of how a quick reaction from a brand can spark great conversations. This post went viral, people were sharing it, and it gave great advertising to Morton's. And I'm sure that a lot of brands would like that. But I think that the one thing to take from it is that we need to remember to keep an eye open on things that we should react to. And we need to also remember that not everyone will contact us directly. People will tend to talk about us, but not on our social channels. So that's where we really need to make sure that our eyes are open. If we do the right thing, nurturing our customers, making a good impression, but also looking after our target group, the customers will help us build a positive image of the brand. And again, as you can see, I'm using Ben and Jerry's ice cream example. I love ice cream. Anyway, you can see here that the vast majority of the conversations and the buzz around Ben and Jerry's is not being generated by Ben and Jerry's themselves, but it's generated by the ice cream lovers who absolutely adore Ben and Jerry's. And I think that looking at that example can definitely help us get the idea of how powerful the social influence and a good customer social care can be. The last statistic that I want to share, and it speaks for itself, because some of you might ask yourselves a question, okay, why would I do that? Why would I bother? Well, the numbers are easy, the numbers are simple. If we only increase the customer retention rate only by 2%, it equals 10% cost reduction. It's huge, and it's definitely worth investing in the customer care online. Okay, but that's not the end. Number 6 is making your product better. And this is something that's also quite, it has a lot of quite spectacular examples. We as a brand, we as brands, as marketers, struggle many times to find out what people really think about us. And as in real life, people who do tend to talk about us, they won't say it in our face. They will talk to their friends, they will post on forums, but they won't contact us directly. So having online monitoring can help us identify the conversations, but not necessarily to reply to them, but to learn from them. So going back to my favorite ice cream, when I searched for a phrase vanilla ice cream, I found a huge number of user-generated content with inspirational ideas for desserts. What a better source of information for brands, cafes, restaurants than this user-generated content. People and brands can take from it, thank the engaged audiences, and create great products. Sometimes it works other way around. And the example that I always see as spectacular is a logo change by Gap that happened about 7 years ago. So what Gap did is they redesigned their logo, and you can see it on the left. The backlash on social media was so huge that they had no other choice but to revert to the old version of the logo. And by the way, I checked this morning, the old version is still live. So, if this is a great example of how a brand can admit that the decision they made wasn't necessarily right, learn from their audience, respect the voice of their audience, and make the wrong right. Okay, so number 7 is the publication time optimization. Great. So it's very important to get the timing right. With the speeding up world, with the speeding up internet, with the trends going skyrocketing, we really need to remember that we need to be online. And although we need to be aware that there's no way we can cover all the conversation on the internet, we need to be also aware of the fact that people are getting more and more impatient when it comes to expectation on the response times. 85% of all Facebook users expect an answer from a brand within 6 hours, and they don't care if it's night, if it's weekend, if it's a holiday. If they have a problem, if they have a query, they expect the answer and they expect it quickly. And this statistic is not the scariest one of the all, because Twitter is even worse. It's 60 minutes, so you only have an hour to read the notification and come up with a strategy whether on how to handle it. So if it's a proper crisis, you need to think of how to address it. If it's something small, you need to think about whether to leave it alone or whether to answer it. And again, online monitoring can give you a great tool that can help you find the right windows for response. And what I'm showing here is a screenshot from Senti1 platform. It's called Our Histogram. What it shows you the peak times of when the audience is the most active. And looking at those trends can definitely give us a very, very specific feedback and insight on when we need to be the most alert. Finding influences. This one is the one that I really, really like. I think it's also one of the trickiest ones that you can deal with when it comes to your online marketing. Influencer is, first of all, hard to define, but also not every celebrity will be the right influencer for you. So whenever you think about finding the influencer, whenever you think about getting the right person to help you push your product through, you need to think about few key elements. First of all is reach, and reach can be easily checked through online monitoring platforms. So when you define the people who have the biggest reach, the second thing you need to do is to check relevance. In many, many cases, people with the biggest reach have the lowest relevance to your brand. So sometimes it's much more important to find someone niche, someone who fits in with your target audience, rather than trying to go for a big and expensive, needless to say, celebrity. The third thing to remember is the engagement. So when you find your influencer, you check their reach and relevance. You need to see if their audiences are actually engaging with them. I've seen a lot of people claiming to be celebrities, posting 10, 20, 30 times a day just to get the reach. But when I was drilling down, looking at the reactions that we're getting, they were actually very, very poor. The last two bits are value and authenticity, and those are last but not least. Obviously, value means that whenever you look for influencer, it's really good to check the kind of content that they're sharing to see if the content carries value, if it's original content, or if it's only reposted. And the last bit is authenticity. There's nothing worse than getting a celebrity or getting an influencer to do your marketing for you, but to do something that's not in line with who they are. It can backlash, it can backfire. So the celebrity or the influencer that you get for your brand promotion has to be properly identified and authentic. So I'm going to now share a couple of examples. The first one is an H&M example. It was a very successful campaign from a while ago. H&M, instead of collaborating with huge stars, they actually found for smaller celebrities who had very faithful and engaged following. And as a result, their audience was hugely engaged and they got 12 million reactions to just 4 videos. And although there's a lot of spectacular example of B2C engagement with influencer marketing, there's less of that when it comes to B2B because the target groups are much more difficult to reach and the target groups are more niche. So the one example from the B2B that I wanted to share with you is the marketing automation hub that was created last year. And it takes about 12 celebrities from online marketing, but none of them was a huge star. All of them are fairly niche, but highly um, profiled in their expertise with great knowledge base and engaged following. And this campaign generated a lot of valuable content and it actually brought 200,000 visits to the blog that the content was posted on and generated tens of thousands of engagements and sign-ups to the webinars and landing page. Needless to say, it also generated quite a significant revenue. So number 9 is building brand authority. We all have a dream as marketers to be perceived as knowledgeable, trustworthy brands that have that thought leadership element to them. And in order to do that, we really need to make sure that whatever we produce in terms of our content, in terms of everything that's coming out spoken in the voice of our brand, resonates with our audience. And I think that this is a great application for online monitoring because if you carefully listen to what people say, if you carefully watch what people react to and measure that, you can actually get great ideas and insights on what content can be created to fully resonate with your audience. And this is a stat that, again, I found today. And as you can see, in 2017, one of the key things will be videos. So watch it. And again, this didn't come from the minds of clever marketers, but it came from the word, the heads of our audience. Selling on social media. Last but not least, this is my favorite. Like, I think that when doing any online activities, whether it's social or any other kind of activity, we always are being asked the same question. Is it going to be worth it? Is it going to sell? Is it going to give us the benefit? And what's in it for me? And I think that without that proper argument that the social can really bring us revenue, we wouldn't be able to run all the great activities online. And social selling concept is not new. This is the poster from the album cover from 1959, where the publisher decided to promote it as 50 million Elvis fans can be wrong. And the social proof is a huge element that can help brands improve their performance. If you gather all the positive mentions and then you share that with your audience or share the statistics with your audience going people love us or that's what people say about us, it instantly gives you and your audience the proof that whatever you offer, whatever you do is worth the interest. And the social proof is not the only thing that sells, because also it's proven and this is the state of social selling published by LinkedIn research. It shows that 90% of the top performing salespeople use social media as a part of their sales strategy. What it means is that successful salespeople are following what is happening online on social channels. They do reach out to people, to potential prospects, and they try to make one-on-one contact. And this is a unique, really unique opportunity to get a great quality lead. No advertising, no other marketing activities can give just that. But it's not only about bottom line sales or individual sales. The statistics also show that C-level executives and the boards, 84% do research and use social media before making a purchase decision. So those are the people who don't tend to make decisions based on your words. They do tend to search for proof that whatever you say about your product or about your brand is true. And where and the place they look for it is obviously online. And I think that looking at that and looking at all of those reasons can definitely show us that having investing that a little bit of time on setting up your online monitoring is definitely worth the effort. It's not that complicated, but the return on investments can be really huge. And you know, with the last accent to my presentation, if you are wondering who the social and online monitoring is for and engagement platforms are for, well, they're for you. There's no really one target group that could benefit more from online monitoring than the other. All of the all people working in sales, in customer support, in media, in marketing, in advertising can use online monitoring to get inspired, to get the results, and they can actually get great things out of that. Okay, guys, so that was it from me. Thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. If you'd like me to give you a couple of minutes, feel free to post some of the questions in the chat box on the left. I'll keep it another couple of minutes. In the meantime, let me just let you know that this webinar is recorded, so we will be distributing it via email to everyone who attended, but also to the people who didn't make it today. We will be sharing the slides and we will be soon releasing a very interesting ebook that will summarize all that methodology in one place. So you will be able to use it at any time when building your strategy. Just as I mentioned, you can easily reach me on my Twitter or contact us via our senti1.com website, and we will be more than happy to help you out with all your questions. And I hope that I'll hear you soon. Thanks a lot.